we absolutely have to talk about Bridgerton season 4 because, oh my goodness, what a season. It was just so, it was so juicy. It was amazing. It was incredible. The level of drama that they brought in part 2 didn't disappoint. I do actually wonder, since they've started releasing the seasons in 2 parts, do they film it intentionally? I mean, obviously they film it, but I mean, like, do they write it that way? Do they write it so that it's split? I saw a post on Instagram that was like, imagine if season 2 had been split right when Anthony proposes to Edwina. Chaos, absolute scenes. It just would have been terrible for me back in 2022. Unfortunately, that was the experience this time. I wasn't as caught off guard by the Be My Mistress thing because I read the book last September. I read Benedict's book, and while I didn't remember most of the major plot points, I didn't really remember what Benedict and Sophie's relationship was like or anything. I remembered that, and so I wasn't particularly surprised by that, but everyone else, scenes terrible. I really enjoyed watching the chaos, and it was really difficult not being able to say anything. But we are here to go through the second half of the season, kind of do like a full season 4 roundup now that we have all the available episodes. I have some notes right here. I'm going to start with, this seems unrelated, but bear with me, this Instagram reel that I saw, which I will leave linked in the show notes, where this guy is talking about how if you grow up in a conservative environment, or if you're from a community that tends to lean conservative, then even if you're a liberal person or you have liberal views, when you grow up, you will still fall back on those conservative values that you were brought up with, and it's kind of like your inbuilt programming, essentially. Like, as much as you want to undo it, you can't. I don't know how I feel about that as a like, it just feels very prescriptive and reductive, and like you can't move past your circumstances. I don't think that's what he was getting at. However, what I will say is that this season really demonstrated it beautifully with Benedict. I thought this season was a great exploration of this issue, because it's like Benedict is someone who is more liberal and progressive and whatever for his society, for the ton. The ton is more conservative. There are strict rules that you have to abide by when it comes to, you know, just how you conduct yourself in society. But when it comes to this is the thing where it's a lot harder to, it becomes a lot harder for Benedict to push back on. And even though he, you know, does have his moments of being like, I hate society, why is society, you know, why are we doing this? Like, when that guy, Mr. Dundas, Esquire, I liked that little callback to him being the guy that was, he kept trying to, I said pestering, he wasn't really doing anything wrong, he was doing his job, and it wasn't like Lady Featherington hadn't done anything wrong, she definitely had, but who kept pestering Lady Featherington in season 3 regarding the succession and the new Lord Featherington. But I liked that it was the same guy, and it's like, yeah, it would be, if not the very same guy, but they would be, it could very plausibly be the same guy, because he was working in the same like department within the House of Lords and all that. So yes, when he comes and Benedict gets really, he has this little blow up about society, and he's like, I'm fed up of society and stuff. Like, he has those moments. There are some other moments when he's talking to his mother and he talks to Anthony. Like, he definitely has his moments of being like, I'm done with society, I don't care, and like, you can say what you want, but I don't care. But ultimately, it's still a thing that he has to get to. Like, in part 1, that's the reason why he says, be my mistress. Because he can't, according to the rules of society, offer Sophie anything different. So even Benedict has to like unlearn his learnings. It's not just the idea of being with Sophie the maid that does this to Benedict, it's also just Sophie herself. Like, in the first episode, the scene at the ball where they're on the terrace and he's like, oh, you know, all those ladies, blah, 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 who cares about ladies? And Sophie's like, hey, mind your tone, mind your language. Do you know what those ladies have done to get here tonight? You will put some respect on their name. And he does, for the rest of the season. They have other little micro moments like that I can't remember right now, but it's just like, yes, even for someone as liberal and progressive as Benedict, it doesn't matter. He still falls back on his conservative upbringing and the values he has from living in the town from time to time. And I love seeing Sophie put him in his place. One of my favorite videos I've seen since part 1 came out is the one where the music's playing. It's like, walk him like a dog, sis, walk him like a dog. And there's just Sophie walking away from Benedict and him trailing after her. I saw this one comment that was like, he's literally following her like a naughty dog that is embarrassed and like feels bad and like feels awkward about being naughty. Yes, that is exactly the way he walks after her. I think the question of whether you can truly adhere to liberal values when you were raised with conservative ones is an interesting discussion generally. I think in this particular reel that I watched, the guy is talking about it in terms of marriage. And if he's not talking about it in terms of marriage, I feel like marriage is where it tends to crop up first. It might not be the only place it crops up. It might be one of those things where it's like, you know, people get more conservative as they get older and accumulate more wealth, basically. But regardless of whether that happens or not, I think marriage is definitely like one of the first places it pops up in a really big way, which I suppose ties neatly into another thought I've been having. I've been posting some reels on the Instagram for this podcast, so if you're not following that page, be sure to check out, because there's a lot of controversy there, but I'll get to that in a second. I've been posting clips of the last podcast episode and a lot of Bridgerton related reels recently. Under one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but under one of them, someone was talking about how there was a comment about the marriage mart or something. I really don't remember the exact comment, but it got me thinking about the marriage mart and dating today. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, how different really is the marriage mart from modern dating? Isn't that kind of the point? Like, people are fed up with the marriage mart, people are fed up with modern dating, but it is what it is. There are rules you follow to play the game. Whether you like it or not, that is what everyone is doing. That is how the thing works. It's not that you can't play against the rules and still find love, but you're an outlier. You're less likely to succeed when you do that, because the whole point is like, you follow the rules, you play the game. People like the Bridgertons are the types of people who don't follow the rules necessarily. I think some of them are very good at following rules. Like Daphne was very good at following rules, which is why she was the diamond of the season. Whereas you have someone like Benedict, who very obviously doesn't follow the rules of the marriage mart. But the whole point is that the show is about them because they're the outliers. The outliers are the stories that we always hear. But the point is, you do the thing, right? And whether you're in the dating market, whether you're in the marriage mart, like, ultimately it's a market. I don't think they're very dissimilar. You try to show yourself, like, present yourself as this cool, interesting person so that you can attract a really good partner. I mean, I know people who have gone to uni, they've got bachelor's degrees, they've got MBAs, and then they don't do anything with those MBAs. Those MBAs were used to help them find a husband or a wife. Those MBAs just never tap into the knowledge. No matter how much the person might want to work or something, for example, if it's a woman, like, she's just going to get married. She's going to get married and she's going to have kids, and then she's not going to be able to work because of the demands of her life and, you know, this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying that to diminish her experiences, but what I'm saying is that modern dating isn't so dissimilar to the marriage mart. I don't feel like I'm articulating this particular point the best. I do think it's a bit more abstract, and like, you need some specific examples maybe to make the point better. But either way, yes, I think modern dating isn't as dissimilar from the marriage mart as people would have you believe, or even like modern arranged marriages. I think the whole thing is like much of a muchness, to be perfectly honest. But this leads nicely into the Instagram controversy I was talking about earlier. I posted some of the clips from the last episode where I was talking about Eloise, and I posted them on Instagram. They went viral, and I mean viral. I had like 15 followers on that Instagram page. I really wasn't posting a lot, but one of my posts about Eloise got over 1 million views. That's insane. That's wild. I never ever thought that me talking about Eloise Bridgerton would ever make me go viral. And the funniest part is, like, there are a million views. There's 40,000 likes or something. There's 400 comments, I think. 400 something comments. Mostly people disagreeing with me. It's just so bizarre and surreal. The internet is not a real place. And I know that the internet is not a real place for those people. Like, for those people, for you, like, the viewer, the listener. I'm not a real person. I'm a character on a screen. These people are characters on a screen. To me, this whole thing is wild. People really took issue with my critiques of Eloise. A lot of people were like, no, go easy on her. She doesn't deserve this. She is the only person saying anything. She's trying, at least. And to those particular people who are like, she's the only person saying this and whatever, I'm like, you know what, fair. The thing is, there was a lot more nuance in the actual podcast episode. Obviously, that all got edited out to become a reel, which is kind of the nature of short form, right? Like, that is what you expect to get. I responded with that in a comment to someone, and I was like, well, you know, it is edited down from a longer clip, so the nuance isn't fully going to be there. And someone was like, well then why didn't you edit it with the nuance in? And I'm like, my guy, we all know how Instagram works. We all know how short form works. Like, please leave me be. Yeah, some people made some valid points that I hadn't considered and all that, and I was like, you know what, that's fine. The discussion is interesting, the discussion is good. What I didn't appreciate, or rather not didn't appreciate, but I was just like, why? It was so many people who were like, no, I see Eloise as my sole character, she's like my favourite person, and I see myself in her, therefore, like, how dare you bash Eloise? I wasn't bashing Eloise. I had a lot of, like, I had arguments. I had justifications for things. I had reasoning. There was reasoning. There was reasoning even in that not so nuanced clip. But yeah, somehow I got interpreted as bashing, like, for the sake of bashing. And I was like, no, it's just commentary. And obviously I understand the game with social media and short form. I'm talking about it now because I think it's interesting. It's definitely not something I ever expected to happen when I posted those clips from the last episode, or just some other reels I recorded talking about not just Eloise, but like Bridgerton in general. The Bridgerton reels seemed to gain a lot of traction, which was a surprise, mostly a pleasant one. So, you know, a welcome, pleasant surprise. It was particularly interesting to me to watch the progress of this particular reel about Eloise, because initially when I posted it, I got a lot of comments from Indian women. And I know this because I could see in the analytics, right, where people were posting from, and it was mostly India at that point. And then as I got later into the evening, the Indians started going to sleep, and then the Americans started commenting. And, you know, some of them were like arguing with the Indians in the comments. Again, so hilarious, so amusing to watch. I went to sleep, I woke up, and the Indians were obviously awake again, and then they were arguing back, and it was just a very entertaining thing for me to sit back and watch throughout the week. One thing I thought was interesting was that a lot of the comments, and I'm not saying all of them, because there were over 400 comments, like, I'm not keeping track of all of them and who sent them, where they've sent them from, like, whatever. I don't even know if I have those analytics. I feel like I'd have to go into every single profile personally, and that's if the person has said where they're from. Regardless, a lot of the comments I saw that were in defense of Eloise were from Indian women. And I thought this was particularly interesting because I'm like, I can see how India being a more conservative society, like Eloise being the one who speaks up in her conservative society, does make you feel that affinity for her versus someone who is more like a Daphne, because that was a comparison I was making in the last episode. And not to be like, you know, women versus women, it was just, you know, sometimes things can just be interesting case studies, and that's all that was. But yeah, so I was talking about Eloise and Daphne, and it's like Daphne tries to game the system basically, so she's not very vocal against the system, but she does her best within the system, whereas Eloise wants to create a new system, but she's doing it half-heartedly. So, you know, both of them present a nuanced comparison to like bounce off against each other, and that's why people are so, you know, they will be so staunchly like, oh, I'm Team Eloise, I'm Team Daphne. And a lot of the Team Eloise people were out in my comments showing their support. And I'm like, I understand why you connect with her in that respect, because yes, you are people who are, from what I could tell from the comments, there's like a lot of women who are like Eloise, who are more vocal and who want to effectively tear the whole thing down, and they're trying to do what they can within their societies. So they feel this affinity for her. And I'm like, sure, first of all, she is not you. You are not her. You don't need to take this real that personally. Like, we can be critical, we can critique, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And just to be clear, I don't think that, Daphne's approach versus Eloise's approach, and, one's better than the other. I think that both of them work in tandem. To be honest, I don't think you can make big changes without having the small daily changes to back it up. And I don't think small daily changes can amount to as much if you don't have the big changes. It's like changing the law, but then people will continue doing what they were doing before. And obviously that doesn't work. But also if people make the changes on the ground level and the law doesn't reflect that, then that's also not a coherent system. And it's sure, while you may get treated like an Eloise for speaking up about different issues and stuff, first of all, I hope you're not doing things half-heartedly like Eloise. And people are making all these excuses for her in my comments, and it was some of them are valid. It's not that they're not valid, but there are still things she could do if she wanted to try and better the system, and she doesn't do them. I think I'm going to leave that there for the time being and use it as a segue into discussing Eloise's storyline in the whole of season 4, because while I did discuss how her storyline went in part 1, obviously now we have part 2 to compare against, and I really liked how her part 2 storyline went. I still have yet to watch the whole season through, all the episodes back to back. That will be a really interesting rewatch. I did say that I liked that Hyacinth called her out on not being very supportive, and I liked that Eloise cared. She was invested for most of the second half of the season in getting Hyacinth to be happy with her again. She couldn't stand that Hyacinth was mad at her. It was very interesting watching her try to make it up to her in that way. And then it was also really great to see their bond and their dynamic shift once John passed away, and it was clear how much that had affected Hyacinth, and what she really needed was a sister like Eloise to be able to tell her that finding love and marriage is worth it. Because coming from someone like Daphne, while Daphne would have been the perfect sister in terms of helping Hyacinth with her finishing lessons and stuff, if Daphne had told her oh, it's okay, you'll find love and all that one day and you'll get married, it wouldn't have hit the same as coming from Eloise. Notorious man-hater and all the rest of it, but for Eloise to be no, it can happen, it will happen in a good way, it's fine, don't worry about it too much, things will be okay, meant a lot. Clearly it meant a lot to Hyacinth, but it was also nice for the audience to hear. And then the culmination of that, them getting into mischief and Eloise sneaking her into the Queen's Ball, I really loved their storyline. It was very sisterly. It was very much okay, the person who wrote this has sisters. Yeah. I also got a comment about Hyacinth that I thought was really interesting, so I'm just going to try and find that. I actually got a really interesting comment on one of my reels. This was the one that had the clip. It had a clip of me talking about Daphne and Eloise, and this person was saying that they feel like Hyacinth is going to be the middle ground because she's the youngest and very much like Daphne, eager to run everything and participate in the ton. She very much admires Daphne, but I also think she ultimately spends more time with Eloise, who voices her strong opinion of the restrictions of a woman in society. And they of course argue with each other, but I think because Eloise is around while Hyacinth is in her most impressionable years, that she'll have an influence on her. I feel that Hyacinth is going to be the prodigy in her family who excels even better than Daphne, but once entering the ton, she might realise that everything is not as shiny and pretty as she imagined it to be, and she might understand Eloise more. Being good in her finishing classes and learning etiquette was easy, but finding a love match like her many siblings is way harder than she thought. And I thought that was a really good way to sum it up, and effectively was summed up in the second half of the season after John's death, and Hyacinth realising that marriage actually, well, rather being in love means you're vulnerable. You've opened yourself up to being intensely, immensely hurt if anything happens to this person. Obviously, she wouldn't have the same reaction to that, or that same understanding from watching Violet because she wasn't even born, right? It doesn't mean anything to her. The same way the other kids have it. But now this is her time, her chance to see the effects of that on someone who is very happily married, in love, and also someone that she cares about very deeply. Also, if she was around whilst there was any discussion of what would happen to Francesca and the succession and, you know, the restrictions of being a widow and all these things, then yeah, I can see how it might make Hyacinth feel jaded. But that's what makes her balance and relationship with Eloise in the second half of the season so good. Speaking of Eloise, Cressida Cowper coming back was not something I was expecting. I mean, I did kind of expect it because I'd seen someone's theory on Instagram that Cressida was going to be coming back as the new Lady Penwood, but that was like the day before the season actually aired. So yeah, Cressida, complete surprise. It was very nice to see her and Eloise. It was just nice to see her now that she's not a raging bitch. And I know she was a raging bitch because she was being treated terribly by her parents, and she's a lot happier now that she's in love with the new Lord Penwood and she has the freedom and the status and she's protected and all these things. And she does address that, like, you know, money and status and all that is good. She is also in love. So, yay, love that for her. She's found an advantageous love match like the Bridgertons. And it's just really interesting and lovely to see who she is without the influence of being miserable, living with her parents. I was reflecting on this and I was like, well, I mean, she starts out quite haughty with Penelope and then she does more quickly become more vulnerable, and then she kind of stays that way in the rest of her scenes. So especially when she's with Eloise, she's a lot more like willing and open to be vulnerable. I thought her reading Mary Wollstonecraft was a really nice touch to... No, I don't think her and Eloise were as unlikely of a couple as they initially seemed based on that. And I thought, yeah, like I said, a nice touch to really show their friendship. But when she's with Eloise, like, understandably, she's vulnerable from the beginning. She's not haughty at all with Eloise because she actually likes Eloise, unlike Penelope. I mean, to come back to the point I was trying to make, yeah, how far do you take it when you accept an apology, or forgive, rather? You forgive a character like Cressida. She has been awful in the previous 3 seasons. Last season, she did a lot of things and caused a lot of damage. Do you excuse it as, like, she, you know, abused others and she was acting out because she was scared and she was vulnerable and all these things? Or do you take it as, like, yes, but you still should know better. You still shouldn't be such a product of your circumstances. You should still have that sense about you. I think it's an interesting discussion to have, for sure. I think it's interesting to think about in general. I do feel like in real life, the experiences I tend to have is like when someone has a reason for being a certain way or whatever, a very common experience I have is someone will tell me, like, this was the reason why I did this or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I understand. And it's immediately taken as agreement. And this really pisses me off because I'm like, I don't agree with you. I didn't say I agreed with you. I just said I understand. I comprehend what you're trying to tell me. That doesn't mean I just, agree with the outcome. Like, ultimately, you shouldn't have done this or whatever. Like, I know your reasoning now. That doesn't automatically justify it. Do you also apply that kind of reasoning to someone like Cressida? I mean, being a fictional character, but also, yeah. Is that a blanket statement, And just to go back to going viral for talking about Eloise, I've also gone viral this week. Yesterday at the time of recording this, that Eloise, those clips were posted a couple of weeks ago now. Yesterday I posted a reel about Kanthony, and I was saying that I don't think Kate and Anthony should have been in the season more than they already were. Again, nothing to do with Simone Ashley and Jonathan Bailey and how the production has been treating them or whatever. Like, this is nothing to do with them. This is to do with the characters, Kate and Anthony. My thesis was that they're oldest children and they need a break and they need to not be solving everyone else's problems and they need to actually be happy in their own lives with their newborn baby, doing their thing. They need to not be up in everyone's business, which they inevitably would be as eldest children. They would be fixing everything. Every time Kate has been on screen since in season 3 and now in season 4, she is dropping some pearls of wisdom. She is helping someone understand some deeper issue and work through it. Hell, Kate, in the first episode of season 3, she's the one who realizes that Francesca is playing the piano. No one else realizes, and those are all Francesca's own family. They don't realize Kate's the one who tells them. And then Anthony, like, I know he admits as much in the wedding scene that his interference would have been an issue and he would have cocked it up. And it's just like, yes, it was good that he didn't interfere and he didn't cock it up, because that's definitely the way it was going in the scenes he was in. Anyway, this was my thesis. This is what I posted on Instagram. And this Instagram reel has also sent everyone into an absolute tizzy. People are so mad at me for saying that Kanthony shouldn't have been more prominent in season 4 than they already were. I don't know. I did say it was an unpopular opinion. I did. And believe me, I love Kanthony. I still think season 2 is my absolute favourite season. Season 4 is definitely very close second now though. But yes, I love their storyline. I posted an Instagram story on my personal account. This was a while ago, but it was like, if you are a Kanthony fan, you're an elder sibling or something like that, because it was just like, yes. And their story is so elder sibling coded, obviously. But yeah, the suggestion that they shouldn't have been more prominent in season 4, I think they were in season 4 the perfect amount, just to be perfectly clear about that. But the suggestion that they should not have been more prominent is not being met very well. A lot of people are mad. A lot of people are like, no, I wanted to see my faves. And it's like, okay, fine, you can have your opinion, like I gave mine. And then some people are being like, no, but the production to Simone Ashley's so dirty and she deserves to be in the show and it's only fair, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not saying she doesn't deserve to be in the show. I'm just saying for the characters, I don't think they needed to be in season 4 more than they were. And I think it's very interesting having some of these reels go viral and having people comment so strongly. Like, I know bridgerton is popular, but I didn't think that my opinions would send people that crazy. And yet it really does feel like it. When you're on the receiving end of it, it really does feel like it. This whole experience has made me think about how people say that controversy and, you know, making people feel really emotional is what will drive clicks and views and all that sort of stuff. Rage baiting people. I didn't do this intend to rage bait people. Just be perfectly clear. I had no desire, no intention. Wasn't even trying to unintentionally rage bait people. Like, I was just clipping the podcast episode where I was yapping away. But yeah, I see how this is a thing that people do. This is a very real tactic that people use. We're all aware that people use it. People will intentionally piss people off because they want the clicks and the views and they want money that comes from posting these things and whatever. And we're all aware that people do it, but we don't. Like, I don't know. I personally didn't have any real appreciation for it until I was the one who accidentally did it. I see now how, yeah, I get why people do it, because it does work ultimately. So it's been a very interesting study in social media, tactics, theory, whatever, as well. All right. I have been yapping for a really long time. I think I've mostly covered the points I wanted to talk about regarding part 2 of season 4, because I loved season 4. Season 4 was an experience. Truly. I look forward to being able to experience it all in one go. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.